morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching from, and welcome to AMN Healthcare International's live show, Onwards and Upwards, where we discuss everything a global healthcare worker needs to know about living and working in the United States. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Danielle Friedman, and we are here for our once-a-month immigration Q&A. We are going to be taking your questions live with our expert attorneys this morning. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat and taking all your questions. So please feel free to ask. Please also let me know where you're watching from. We love to see where everybody's watching from. I see we already have some people putting in the chat. We have Nestine watching from South Africa, Jonad watching from the UAE, Joan saying hello, Bridget from Nigeria, Roz from Zimbabwe. We are covering the globe, everybody. Thanks for being here today. And if you are inspired by today's show and you would like to apply for our program, once again, we are AMN Healthcare International, and we offer both staffing and direct hire opportunities all across the United States. So our link, we're going to put it in the chat, is amnhealthcare.com/international. And if you would like to take advantage of one of our staffing or direct hire opportunities, you can apply today, and our recruiters are on hand, ready and excited to help you reach your American dream. So without further ado, let's bring out our expert attorneys.
Hi, Danielle.
Good morning, Mike. Expert attorney, solo. Well, we'll see what happens. Maybe Chris will join us. But we are very happy to have you here, Mike. Maybe it'll be a conversation between me and you. So that'll be fun too. We like that. Okay. Mike, let's take a second to introduce yourself because you have lots of experience and our viewers want to know all about it.
Yeah, my name is Mike Hammond. I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I've been doing immigration work for 30-some years and healthcare work for about 25 of those 30-some.
Very nice. And Mike, I'm curious, would you say most of that healthcare work is with nurses, or are you doing all kinds of professionals?
The majority of it is with nurses, also allieds, and then hospital systems hire IT workers and accountants and finance people, just like every other company does. So when you're representing hospitals, you get a lot of other, just like any other corporation would. So
that's very interesting. Okay, I learned something new about you today.
Ah, there you go.
All right. Well, thanks for being on, and welcome, Chris.
Sorry about that. I was having a little technical difficulty on my end, but it all seems okay now.
Okay, good. Well, we're happy you're here. If you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, we'd love to hear your history also.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Chris Musillo. I'm an immigration attorney. Actually, Mike Hammond was my boss, mentor, and partner for many years and still serves at least in some of that capacity as a mentor. And so pleased to be here and look forward to our usual monthly chat with AMN.
All right. Well, we are happy to have both of you on. You have a wealth of knowledge and experience. So I'm sure everybody is excited to ask their questions. I see lots of questions going on off in the chat. So let's start with what happened for our most recent Visa Bulletin, for the August Visa Bulletin. Mike, can you give us the update, please?
Yeah, first of all, there were no surprises. There was no forward movement, which is not terribly unusual in the summer. There was actually retrogression in the EB2 category for both other workers and individuals from Mexico and Philippines, which would affect allieds who might be OTs, PTs, pharmacists, docs, etc., but would not affect nurses. There's also a note at the last page of the Visa Bulletin. All of us tend to focus on the two charts, but there is always some information at the end. Well, not every month, but often. And it talks about predictions for future. And it does indicate, specifically relating to the EB3 category, that there is high demand, and it will likely for September become unavailable, if not sooner, which again is not unusual. It just means the system is working efficiently. It does have some practical effects, though, which I'm sure we'll talk about as we go through this call. But essentially, no surprises out of the August bulletin.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So you said a couple of things that I actually wanted to ask you a little bit more about. So you said there were no surprises for the August Visa Bulletin in the summer. So I wanted to ask you why you say there's no surprises for August. And then as a follow-up, you think there's a note that says it might become unavailable. Can you explain what that means for next month?
Sure. Those two concepts are kind of tied together. So there's a certain number of immigrant visas issued each year in the beginning of the fiscal year, which is October 1st. And the government works on a use it or lose it rule. So the number is not exactly 140,000, but that's the baseline number. So let's just use that as an example. They issue 140,000. That means there's 140,000 immigrant visas that can be given out, awarded in the course of a fiscal year. If we get to September 30th and they've only passed out 120,000, then that means 20,000 are lost and cannot be used. They don't roll over into the next year. So as much as possible, the system wants to use all 140,000 before September 30th. Well, you don't want to wait to the last minute to try to issue. So they try to issue them spread out through the course of the year, but issue most of them so that by the time they get to August and September, they're gone, because that's their best chance of actually using all 140,000. So even though we may look at the bulletin and go, it's unavailable, which means there's none of the 140,000 left, and we may view that as a negative thing, and it may be negative to you if you had an interview in, say, September, but long term and for the overall health of the system, it's a good thing. So unavailable simply means we've ran out. There's no more pieces of pie left. I like to use pie examples because for some reason they relate to me. So this pie is cut into 8 pieces. Once all 8 pieces are gone, there's no more pie until October 1st. So as a practical matter, what that means is if you have an interview scheduled in August even, or September at any one point, they could run out of their 140,000. Generally speaking, what they do in that situation is they complete your interview and simply let you know that when there's a new fiscal year opens up, which is October 1st, that they will issue your visa at that point. That's not unusual. It happens both here in the U.S. with I-45 processing and overseas with consulate processing. So unavailable, that's all that means.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. That is helpful. I saw a couple of questions about this in the chat, so hopefully that answers those questions. So Chris, I am going to turn to you for our predicted follow-up of what is going to be the prediction for the Visa Bulletin for the fiscal year October 2025. And let's all keep in mind, we're just predicting here. We don't necessarily know. But what are your thoughts? And then we're going to ask Mike Hammond next. What are his thoughts for the upcoming year?
Yeah, I mean, I think just piggybacking off Mike, the September Visa Bulletin, which will come out in mid-August, I think it's safe to say will show no movement in the EB3 categories. I think it's safe to say that. Indeed, based on the note that Mike referenced at the end of the Visa Bulletin, it also would not be surprised to see a U, the letter U, show up in some of the categories, and that just simply means it's unavailable. And as Mike said, that means they've used the 140,000th visa. Come October 1st, we have a new fiscal year. Again, that Visa Bulletin will be released in maybe the second week or so of September. And so where will that Visa Bulletin be? My guess is it will probably be for EB3, something like May, June, July for the all other, and maybe something like the end of February, maybe into March, both of 2023, by the way, for the Philippines. And I would guess, based on looking at the volumes, that we will see progression throughout fiscal year 2026, which is to say from October 1, 2025 until roughly this time next year. We'll see progression of, I would say, on the low end, maybe 4 or 5 months over the course of those 12 months. On the high end, maybe 9 months. And probably if I had to take a guess, it'd be in between those. So something like, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, which would mean at this time next year, we might see an EB3 Visa Bulletin for the all other, maybe ticking into 2024. And for the Philippines, maybe something like September-ish, October-ish of 2023. And again, Danielle, I just want to end where you started with, these are just best estimate predictions. There's a pretty big error bar in my estimates.
Okay, well, thank you for giving us your predictions, Chris. I know everybody is still curious, even if we are just predicting. Sometimes it's an educated guess. You look at the notes, you know, also from past movement. And at the end of the day, we don't know what's going to come. But I think it's still interesting to hear the expert predictions. Mike, do you have anything to add to Chris's predictions?
Well, I would agree with Chris that we're going to see maybe not quite as much as we would all hope for. But I think we're going to be somewhere there in the middle. I think what's interesting throughout this year is we didn't quite get to the date for filing chart numbers, which is traditionally what happens. So I think it'll be interesting to see that date for filing number, is to see how far that moves forward in October. And if we can, get 6 months out of that, that would be a pretty good prediction. I'd like to be a little bit further along. I think the other thing that would be very interesting is we saw some separation with the Filipino category and the all other, or the rest of the world category. It'll be interesting to see whether that spread continues and grows. And I certainly predict that will be the case based on some numbers I'm seeing. But yeah, I would say if we can go 6, 7 months during the course of the entire next fiscal year, that's the best we can hope for.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing your predictions, Mike and Chris. I want to go back to something you just said, Mike, about the Philippines and the rest of the world and them not tracking together. I know you all spoke about this last month, but for anybody who may have missed, I'd love to give a little summary explanation, what we're talking about, why it matters, what we think. So Chris, can I turn to you first?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think the Visa Bulletin is one of the more frustrating things. It does reflect an enormous demand for overseas workers by U.S. employers. And so, I think, but the interesting part about the split between the EB3 all other rest of the world and the EB3 Philippines, that is really being driven by an extraordinary number of Philippine nurses being demanded by U.S. employers and being put into the pipeline by virtue of I-140 filings. I do think that we will continue to see a split between those two categories. My guess is it might grow, the split might grow, so we might see the all other move at a faster rate than the Philippine number. Having said that, I don't think they're going to be so dramatically different that we're going to see anything like an India or a Chinese situation for the Philippines.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying, Chris, for anybody who's watching along and may have questions about the two dates not tracking along. So Mike, let's take some questions from the chat. So I see a question from you. You says, if my country is banned effect from, will this affect nurses? So sounds like, unfortunately, you is part of the list of countries that have been banned. And they are asking about how this may affect nurses. So can we talk a little bit about what you was talking about? What is the ban? And do you see or have you heard anything about it expanding?
So yeah, there's a list of countries where the issuance of visas, both immigrant and non-immigrant, is right now completely banned. There is some generic language that says they can make exceptions based upon the opinion of the U.S. Attorney General, who today seems like she's probably fairly busy. But I'm working on something else. But aside from that,
Also travel related.
also travel related, just not a visa to that island. But there's not a process yet that's in place. Can we get an exception for a nurse? I don't know. I actually have an H1 med tech that we are probably as early as Monday or Tuesday starting the paperwork to try to get an exception. The problem is there's not a process, so we're making it up. We could be wasting a lot of time. We don't know. We can hope that there will be a process outlined, that there will be certain exceptions, and that they will always determine that a healthcare worker doing direct patient care is in the national interest and should be exempted from the ban. That is, I believe, probably a pipe dream. I find that hard to believe that the current administration will do that, but that is certainly what we are shooting for. So for right now, if you're in that situation, and first of all, if your priority date's not current, I would put it under the category of, I used to hear this all the time from someone who was a brilliant person and has new glasses, and said, you cross that bridge when we come to it. So if you're not current right now, I'm not saying don't be concerned about it all, but a lot of things could change by the time you do become current. But for anyone else who is current, right now they're not, they've had a couple interviews, which I was surprised at. The consulate did not cancel. I had one that went last week, just in case. And they were told, no, you're on the ban list, and so we can't allow you in. But we'll see. And again, reach out to your recruiter, your agency, your company, AMN, whoever's sponsoring you, to see if there is a process for trying to get one of those exemptions, whatever those look like.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I think the biggest thing I'm taking from what you said is to continue on until, you're told otherwise. So if, things can change, as we have seen. So continue on. I'm sure there is some anxiety for you may be watching and you may be a part of that list. I would suggest, as Mike has suggested, continue on. You don't know what's coming around the corner. Okay, so Chris, we're going to turn to you for a question from Dominic. Dominic says, please, how far with the Healthcare Resilience Act? So I think Dominic is talking about HWRA. We haven't talked about HWRA in a little bit. Is there any update there that you could share? And what is HWRA?
Yeah, right. So the HWRA is a bill that has been introduced both to the 2021-22 U.S. Congress and the 2023-24 U.S. Congress. In both editions of that bill, what it sought to do was recapture visas from years ago that were authorized by Congress, but because of mainly U.S. government bureaucratic inefficiencies had gone unused. And what it said is we've got this major nursing shortage in the U.S., and so let's recapture these visas these are all visas that should have been used by Homeland Security, and let's put them into the current visa quota for a temporary period of time, but we will limit the use of those visas to just overseas nurses. And it received, solid backing in the most recent iteration of it, which was the 2023-2024 Congress. It had, I think, 20, maybe 22 senators out of 100. So that's about a fifth of the Senate. And what's pretty unusual for any bill, much less something that has immigration as a centerpiece, there was, I think, 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans. The Republican Party, of course, is the Trump Party, and the Democratic Party, at least at that time, was the Biden Party. So we had, and so it received what we would call bipartisan support. But unfortunately, because of the way the Congress works, the U.S. Congress works, it did not actually ever receive a vote in either the 21-22 period or the 23-24 period. Now we are in the 25-26 period, and that Congress is in and out of session for the next 2 years. And my understanding is that there is a third bill that is being considered and kicked around, but there's nothing to report at this time. I would be surprised if something isn't introduced in the near term. But the U.S. Congress generally takes most of the month of August off, and I would doubt that it would be introduced before the end of this month, although it's theoretically possible. I don't really want to get into the specifics of what would be in that bill because there's still conversations about that happening, but I do think that it would be an optimistic bill that would be good for foreign educated nurses and healthcare workers to come into the United States. But the easy part is sort of drafting and introducing the bill. The harder part is drumming up interest in Congress. I do know that one of the reasons this bill is taking a little bit longer to reintroduce is that everyone is trying to work behind the scenes to see if we can get a bill introduced that actually has a chance of passing. And so all that I've said sounds good and optimistic. And then two important things are, one, timeline. I think the timeline could be any time in the next year and a half. These bills tend to go slow, and then they go lightning fast. And so sometimes it doesn't seem like anything's happening, and then overnight something happens. So in terms of timeline, impossible to say. Could be any time in the next 18 months. In terms of probability of success, I think we would not be being truthful if we thought it was high, but that doesn't mean it's zero. I know that there is a good chunk of U.S. congressmen and senators who are interested in this bill just based on their past co-sponsor support for the bill. But any bill is very hard in this Congress, and any bill on immigration is even harder. So this is by no means, it's certainly not likely to happen, but that doesn't mean that it still doesn't have a chance. And frankly, every bill in Congress, especially something in immigration, is more unlikely to happen than likely to happen. But that's why the hard work is the hard work. So I think that's the update on the HWRA. And I do think we'll have some information in the next maybe 30 to 45 days.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing, Chris. Always interesting to hear an update on the Healthcare Worker Resilience Act. What does HWRA stand for? Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act. I think that's right. Yeah, there we go.
Workforce, but yeah.
Workforce. Okay, Resilience Act. Okay. Well, thank you for the update. So we'll look forward to maybe hearing more in the next 30 to 45 days, and our fingers will be crossed for positive movement there.
And who knows, it might even have a different name, because that one is hard to say, Daniel.
Well, HWRA, as long as we just go HWRA.
Right.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so we have got lots of questions today. So, Mike, we're going to turn to you. So I see a question that I'm sure a lot of you who are watching can relate to and can understand the anxiety that this person is having. So Delaley says, my I-140 was filed in December of 2023, but yet to be approved. I received monthly Visa Bulletin from AMN immigration staff, but I don't consider that enough reassurance. I want to know if it's possible to modify the application status from standard to premium so I could begin to see some process. I'm willing to bear the cost of this modification. So I think generally there are a lot of nurses who are feeling a bit anxious when they don't see their I-140s getting a fast approval, which I think we can understand. It's tough to wait. Retrogression is tough. It's tough to see those delays. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get here, but it's tough to experience those delays. So, Mike, I want to turn to you. Do you usually recommend premium processing to your clients right now? If so, why? If not, why?
Yeah, I am not recommending premium processing. The reason why is because you get your priority date. So you get your spot in the line, the queue, when your case is filed, not when your case is approved. So right now we have a queue that is, if you're rest of the world, we're April 1st, 2023. So we're talking about a 2-year line. And as long as the processing of the I-140 stays below 2 years, then you have not accomplished anything legally by premium your case and having your case already approved. Whether your case is approved or not approved simply does not make any difference in how quickly you're going to get your green card and get here to the U.S. So I believe, and the exception to that is if you have an old priority date that you're trying to recapture. Now, right now, I just talked to some people the other day here about what are we seeing, and we're up to like 18 months now is what we're seeing. And we've got a few stragglers that are at the 19, 20-month mark, and you submit a service request and they tell you that it's not even outside of what they consider normal processing times, which, by the way, internal USCIS normal processing times and what they're quoting on their website are vastly different. And instead of looking at their website, you might as well just ask a neighbor because it'll be just as accurate, maybe more accurate. But so I would not be concerned with a December date. Most employers will allow someone to upgrade their case as long as they pay for it themselves. It is a fee of $2,805 for the filing fee alone, though. So, budget $3,000 or so for that. But I personally try to convince as much as possible, if it's your money, to convince you to use your money in a better way than spending it on this. But I also understand for peace of mind, for some people, peace of mind is well worth $3,000. And if that's your situation, then speak to your agency and your employer about doing that. But again, no legal relevance to doing it.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I think that's very helpful. So to recap what you said, the important stuff, the date that matters is the date that you were filed. That is your priority date, correct?
Yes.
So therefore, paying premium processing may not be helpful right now in our visa retrogression kind of delay, because the date that matters is the date that you're filed. That's when you'll know if you're moving forward in the queue. Correct. Okay. So hopefully that gives you some answers, Delayli. I know it's very anxiety provoking to wait. And if you feel that that is going to give you peace of mind, we definitely understand that. But there is no legal benefit, really. It's not going to help move the Visa Bulletin. The date that you are filed is the date that you are in line, which is why it is so important to get your application filed ASAP. So if you are watching and you are thinking, where do I start? How do I get in line? You want to apply and get your space and get filed. You can apply on our website. It's amnhealthcare.com/international. And our recruiters on the direct hire and staffing side will be able to help you with your applications. They're very skilled at helping you find a good fit. So if you have, let's actually bring up, we have a graphic on how to make yourself most marketable. Because if you're watching along and you're thinking, is now the time to apply? It is very competitive out there and you want to make your application stand out. These are the ways to do it. So number one, in order to file your I-140, in order to get your place in line, you need to pass the NCLEX. That is your golden ticket. You need to also be thinking, what is your specialty? Is your specialty in demand? Are you applying for a job that is looking for that specialty? Current work experience in an acute care setting. If you are sitting in your home country and thinking, what can I do today to make myself better, to make myself more marketable? That current work experience is going to be key. That is what U.S. employers are looking for. Type of qualification or degree. If you have a diploma or an associate's, perhaps you want to study for a bachelor's to make yourself more marketable. Years of experience, type of hospital experience. These are things that U.S. health systems are looking at. Do you have experience? Are you working to make yourself a better professional? And then the last one, English language pass. So I think sometimes this one goes to the back of the line. You think you can do it later, but this is a very, very important thing to do. This is another way to make your application stand out and set yourself apart from the crowd. Pass that English exam. We did a whole session on English exams recently and the importance of English exams. So please go back on our social media and watch that. Pass that English exam early. You want to make sure that you have all of your boxes checked. So when you get called to do your interview at the embassy, you are ready to go. Okay, so let's turn back to our questions. I see we got lots of questions in the chat. So Mike said something about recapturing a previous priority date. So I see a question from Winnie, and Chris, we're going to turn to you. Winnie says, how likely is it to recapture a previous priority date, but now with a different employer? So is that possible if you had a previous priority date to recapture it? What does that mean?
Right. So recapturing a priority date is something that is done quite frequently. Our office does it. I know Mike's office does it quite a bit as well. And here's what it is. You have had an I-140 filed, and this is important, and approved with an employer. And so let's pretend you had one filed in January of 2023 with XYZ Healthcare, and it gets approved in February, March, April, May, whenever, in let's say in October of 2023, but it was filed in January in 2023. Therefore, your priority date is January 2023. Now, fast forward 18 months, we're here in July of 2025, 30 months, and we're here in July of 2025. And XYZ Healthcare calls you up and they say, unfortunately, we no longer have a position for you. We've, gone bankrupt or something, and this position no longer exists. What you need to do is make sure you have a copy of your I-140 approval notice. And now you call up AMN, and AMN says we would be happy to recapture your petition, or maybe AMN works with a customer of theirs, a ABC Hospital Group, and now ABC Hospital Group would love to file your case. If they hired the lawyer's office, our office, Mike's office, who's ever, we would file the ABC Healthcare I-140. We have to do all the normal things we do in an I-140 filing. We have to make sure there's a prevailing wage determination. Notice has been given to employees, posted notice. We need to see a copy of your NCLEX, your passport, everything. It's essentially a brand new petition with one difference. We include one more piece of paper, which is the old XYZ approval notice from 2003, from January of 2023. So there's one more piece of paper in that filing. Then shortly after, we might even file a case like that. Premium processing, the U.S. government in August issues us an approval for the new ABC hospital system, but instead of it saying priority date July 18th, 2025, the U.S. government will actually backdate it all the way to January of 2023, which is a date that has been recaptured. So now you have a new ABC I-140 approval notice with a priority date not of July of 2025, but of January 2023, which means that you are in all likelihood eligible to move your case through the pipeline, through the National Visa Center process, and then and move forward without any delay to your case. So this is a way for the U.S. government to essentially allow you to not lose your place in the retrogression queue by recapturing an old priority date.
Okay, so thank you, Chris. So to recap, yes, if you have an old priority date and you have an employer that wasn't able to move forward, we can recapture that. So we have a lot of employers on both the staffing and the direct hire side that would be interested in recapturing your priority date. Please feel free to apply on our website. Let your recruiter know that you have a previous priority date. Our website is amnhealthcare.com/international, and we will help you find a new home on your way to the U.S. Okay, so we have a question from Chad. So Mike, we're going to turn to you. So Chad's priority date is April 25th, 2023. So that is coming up soon for you, hopefully, Chad. And he says, can I still apply for RN work outside Philippines, or should I wait for my priority date to be current? So I think generally we're speaking about this idea of working in another country. Obviously, it depends where your priority dates may be. There's a lot of considerations. Can you help us kind of walk through what considerations Chad should maybe think about?
Sure. I think there's several considerations. The most obvious one, and this question alludes to it, is when will my priority date become current? And what's my prediction for that? And I think that's a very, very important question, but I don't think it's the only important question. I think, first of all, you definitely need to speak to your agency, your supplier company, and the hospital that you're slated to work for to determine what they would like you to do, what is important to them. Because maybe if right now you are not in a patient care role and you have an opportunity to go to a patient care role, and let's say the contract is only going to be for a year, even if your priority date becomes current, everyone in the room, which would be you, your agency, and your hospital, might think that's still a better decision. Sure, it delays you coming to the US because you're going to have a priority date current and you're going to have a later interview because of your 1-year assignment, but you're getting 1 current year of direct patient care work. So there are a lot of variables that come into play. One of the things that I think people ask all the time is, should I shift my interview to my new work site location? I'm going to take a job in Egypt. Should I switch my interview there? And that leads to all kinds of other questions. And again, is a kind of a complicated answer and would be individualized. But I think, first of all, speak to your employer, speak to your recruiter. A 1-year assignment for you, Chad, would not be out of the question based upon maybe your current circumstances.
Okay, so there you go, Chad. So speak with your employer, speak with your agency before making any big decisions. But I think that's good advice for Mike. Find out what's going to be important to them, what's going to be important to you, and figure out what's going to be a good path for you forward. Okay, so we have still got lots of people joining. So hello to Frank, who's watching from Liberia Firestone Medical Center. Hello to Jade, who's watching from Saudi Arabia. Hello to Lala, who's also watching from Saudi Arabia. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a little bit of time left, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we are going to try to get to as many as we can. So Chris, we have a question from Ike. Ike says, how long does it take to get an interview date for someone with a current priority date? So congrats to you, Ike, if you have a current priority date. That's exciting. Maybe, Chris, you could just walk us through what sort of happens next. My priority date is current. Exciting.
So if your priority date is current, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your fee bills have been paid. If your fee bills haven't been paid, then you'll need to contact your recruiter and or the law firm and or your employer to make sure your fee bills are paid. Second, you'll need to make sure that your packet has been submitted to the National Visa Center. Assuming those two things are done, now it comes down to each embassy themselves. And some embassies are very backlogged. Some embassies are very, very quick. And so that's really the question. So it's very tailored to where you're going. And so I would definitely I think I'm giving you the general answer. The real answer is you should be contacting your recruiter and your law firm and your employer, and they can probably give you a much more tailored. So if we were getting the question here, what we would do is we would look internally. So let's pretend you were going to Manila. We would look internally and we would see when, in fact, we are seeing scheduled appointments. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's very bumpy. There's certain times of the year. So at this time of the year, for instance, a lot of the embassies move some of their resources away from immigrant visa processing to student visa processing, because the student visas all have to be issued in the summer because most students start school in August or maybe September. So you may see a bit of a backlog at this time of the year. Also, we see H-1B interviews tick up in the summertime. Why? Because a lot of H-1Bs start on October 1st. So this time of the year is sometimes a little difficult. The other piece of it is summertime. There's just more consular officials. They're normal human beings. They're taking vacations and things like that in the summertime. And so the embassies and consulates may be backlogged. Similarly, if you become current and you become current in the December Visa Bulletin with the holiday season, Christmas, New Year's, et cetera, we often see that the appointments backlog into January and even February. So, what you're going to do is, one, make sure not only are you current, but that you have your NVC process sorted out. And then number two, you're going to want to see what's the situation with your particular embassy or consulate. And then if you have an experienced attorney or employer or recruiter in this area, ask them what are they seeing internally. Mike said something maybe 15 minutes ago that's right. The U.S. government publishes these dates on I-140 processing times and also on these embassy appointments. And the embassy appointment one, candidly, is a little better than the I-140 and some of the USCIS processing times. But the best information you can get is probably from the law firm who's doing a lot of these things. And if they have a big volume at your particular embassy, they can probably give you a much better guess as to what's the situation with your appointment. Last piece, if by some chance you just became current in the last week, I'm looking here, it's the 18th of the month. The Visa Bulletin just came out, a week ago, not even. And so, the government just doesn't move that fast. So don't be surprised if you don't get that email the minute after the Visa Bulletin is dropped.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. That is all helpful advice. You said something about the fee bills, which, Mike, I'm going to turn to you, which there's a question from Jade also relating to fee bills that I'd like to ask. Jade says, is it advisable to pay for my dependent's fee bill, although my priority date is not current? My priority date is December 6, 2023. So is it possible to pay for the fee bills before you come current? And what do you generally advise your nurses?
It is possible. You can pay for the fee bills as soon as the National Visa Center issues them. The National Visa Center is supposed to be following the date for filing chart for processing, but they historically have not done so. So whenever those fee bills are issued, you can certainly pay them. However, if you're paying them out of your pocket and you're not current and you're not expected to be current for 6 months, 9 months, a year from now, there's no advantage to you in paying those fee bills now. So I would probably wait. I wouldn't wait till I was totally current. Someone in one of the comments made the question about being DQed. Is that an advantage because you're DQed earlier than someone else? It's only a secondary advantage after you're current. So if you're DQed, but you're not current, it means nothing. So paying the fee bills, waiting is perfectly fine. A lot of employers and agencies will guide you as to when they think is a good time, so that you can comfortably be paid, submit all your documents, be DQ'd before you become current. So I would be, I would base it on how soon do I think I'll be current. If you've got a priority date in 2024, I would certainly not be paying them this month.
Okay, thank you, Mike. That's helpful advice. So a follow-up question, just to clarify. So for those who are watching and may not know what these terms are, DQ, NVC, it's confusing stuff. We've all been talking about it for a long time, so it's almost second nature to us. But for someone who's watching along and thinking, what does that really mean? So DQ is documentarily qualified, correct? And once you are done with the NVC stage, you become DQ'd, i.e. documentarily qualified, correct?
Yes.
And in order to be DQ'd, you have had to got all your paperwork. You're basically ready to go. You're ready to go for your interview. You've paid your fee bills. You're kind of parked until your priority date becomes current, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I think we actually have a graphic that we can pull up on the steps of the consular process, which might be helpful as we're kind of talking through this. So we have the steps to the consular green card process, and we have highlighted here what is affected by retrogression. So when we say you can still move through the process, you can get yourself ready, filed, and we are still processing, this is what we mean. So there are essentially 5 steps. We're kind of distilling it down. Step 1 is the pre-filing. So that's all of the work that you are doing on your end, taking your NCLEX, getting your English, everything that you need to do ahead of time and everything that the hospital needs to do ahead of time. We're talking about the prevailing wage, the posting notices, all of that. Step 2 is filing the immigrant petition. So this is the I-140 filing. This is where you get your place in line. This is where you get your priority dates. So this is the all dates that we're all talking about. The Visa Bulletin moves and lets us know when your priority dates will become current. Step 3 is the National Visa Center. So I think about this as it's the secretary. It's organizing your paperwork. It's issuing your fee bills. It's getting you ready to get to that consulate interview. Once you have paid those fee bills, once you've done all that paperwork, you are what is called DQed, and you are parked at step 3. Once you become current, you can move to steps 4 and 5, which are having your consulate interview and welcome to America. And steps 4 and 5 are the ones that are affected by retrogression. This is where we're seeing that delay. So hopefully that kind of helps to explain what some of these terms are, how everything moves. Mike, did I leave anything out or misstate anything?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, good. All right, perfect. Thank you both. Some good information. You know, I'm still learning things, even many years later. It's still confusing for me, everybody. It's a lot of stuff. It's kind of hard, which actually leads me to another thought. If you are following along and you are also feeling a little bit lost, like sometimes I do when we're talking, you know, Chris and Mike are the experts. They've been doing this for a long time. I sometimes refer back to our guidebooks. So if you've been watching along for a long time, you know that we have free guidebooks on our website. We're going to drop the link in the chat. You can learn all of these immigration terms. You can learn more about the process, more about the questions you should be asking. And these are free books for you. So it's just there as a helpful resource. We're going to drop the link in the chat. You can download these for free. Knowledge is power. So please feel free to take advantage of these. Okay. So let's see. We have another question from Mohammed. So Chris, I'm going to turn to you. Mohammed says, what should I do while waiting for my priority date to become current? What is your advice for Mohammed there?
I would, get a hobby. It depends on where you're from. In terms of professional advice, candidly, Daniel, this might be better for you to suggest what the nurses can do to make sure that their skills keep up. From an immigration standpoint, there's really not much to do. Just wait. And I might say one thing: don't keep going to the Visa Bulletin page and keep pressing refresh. It's not going to get you any faster. But from a skills standpoint, I do know that all the clients do like your skills to be recent, relevant, and timely. But Danielle, maybe you can talk a little bit about what skills are most appropriate for the nurses to make sure they're keeping up during the retrogression.
Of course, yeah. So we talk about waiting wisely. So if you have been following along for some time, you've heard us use this term. We also say control what you can control oftentimes on this immigration Q&A. If you are watching along and thinking, what can I be doing during this time? How can I make myself better? How can I, quote unquote, wait wisely? Some good advice from Chris is to keep yourself relevant and current on your skills. So the hospital systems that we are working with, the healthcare systems, they want to see that you have experience. So that means working bedside. Get to that acute care setting and up your work experience. You have this time to make yourself a better nurse, and whatever that means to you and your career goals. You know, it's a good time to sit back and think, how do I want to plan my career trajectory? What am I going to do now that's going to set me up for success? Something that we also say that you could be doing at this time while you're waiting is doing that English test. So that's another thing that you don't want to get stuck at that step 3 where you're waiting at the NVC and you haven't passed that English test. Sometimes it can be scarier than the NCLEX test to take the English test, is what I'm hearing from our nurses. So get prepared for that. That's another thing that you could be doing during this time while we say wait wisely. So those are just some examples. We have whole shows on this, so please feel free to look back on our archives. And we'll drop some links in the chat with some good shows on how to wait wisely. What are things that you could be doing? So we have got lots of questions. We got about 10 minutes left, so we will try to get to as many as we can. So I see a question, Mike, from CE User. He's saying, please discuss H-1Bs or TN visas to green cards. Can it be different employers or do they have to be the same? So I think let's just take a step back. Can you explain what is an H-1B, what is a TN, and who might it be an option for?
Sure. We'll talk TNs first because they're the easiest and the most straightforward. TNs are available for individuals who are citizens of Mexico or Canada. There is a list of occupations that are eligible for a TN. If your occupation is not on that list, you're not eligible. So it's a very simple test. RNs are on that list. Multiple allied occupations are on that list, but not all allieds are on the list. The visa process is fairly straightforward. If you're from Mexico, it's done at the U.S. consulate in Mexico. If you're Canadian, it is done at the border. So if you're driving across or at the airport, it requires a state license and the visa screen and the appropriate education. State license part's a little tricky because often states you can't get the license until you're actually here in the U.S. So there's some ways to address that, but it's a pretty straightforward process. It's initially given for 3 years. It can be extended basically indefinitely. It is a non-immigrant visa, which means it's not necessarily designed to lead to a green card. However, you could get a green card with it, but the processing and timing and steps you have to take are a little tricky. So you certainly want to work with your attorney or hospital to make that happen. So TN is a great option if you're eligible for a TN. By all means, you will be in high demand because assuming you have a state license and a visa screen, today's Friday and you could be working here in the U.S. on Monday. So it can happen that fast. H-1Bs, it's a work visa. It's not generally available to RNs. It is available to allieds, med techs, OTs, PTs, pharmacists, etc. The eligibility requirements are that you need to have a BSN and the position you're going to must be the type of position that normally requires a BSN for the job. And that's why most RN positions do not qualify. There are some that do. Certain hospitals have a BSN requirement for certain positions. In addition, there's something called the H-1B visa lottery. It's only given out a certain number of visas per year. That lottery is held in April, so we've missed it for this year. There are what we call cap-exempt employers. Those are employers who are nonprofits affiliated with universities, and they're exempt from the lottery, so they could sponsor you today, anytime, year-round, without the lottery. But there are very specific criteria. The H-1B can lead to a green card. It's much simpler to do a green card from an H-1 than it is from a TN. So that's a quick rundown.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. That is very helpful for anybody who might be considering a TN or an H-1B. Just a note to add to what Mike has said. From our standpoint, the employer and us working with healthcare systems, TNs are in high demand. If you qualify for a TN visa, please apply on our website and let our recruiters know that you are eligible for a TN visa, and we can help you find a placement. So that's amnhealthcare.com/international. As Mike said, if you are eligible for a TN visa, you could be here pretty fast. So it's quite a unique opportunity. On the H-1B front, we do have employers that are looking for H-1Bs. However, as Mike has explained today and in the past, the employer also needs to qualify. So there are fewer opportunities on the H-1B front because fewer health systems qualify. So just a note on that. But if you are interested, apply today and our recruiters will be able to help you figure out if they have a position for you. Okay, so Chris, we have a question for you from John. John says, hello, Chris. Are you able to recapture my priority date, which was used to file PERM if I qualify for Schedule A? So I'm thinking maybe John was filed, maybe for something like a CNA role or something like that, a PERM role, and now is maybe an RN and wants to recapture that previous priority date.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to answer specific questions. So if he wants to go ahead and send me an email, I'd be happy to take a look at his case and give him specific advice on his case.
Okay. Generally, if you were filed as a CNA under the PERM category, can you like recapture that priority date and file as an RN under Schedule A?
Yeah, you can generally recapture priority dates in those instances.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. Good to know. Okay, so I see we got a couple minutes left, so we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Okay, Mike, Nancy Ann is saying, hello there. Can I apply for a green card lottery since sometimes it's faster if one is lucky? What is this green card lottery that Nancy Ann is talking about, and do you recommend somebody applies?
Sure. The lottery she's discussing is what's called the diversity lottery. The announcements, it's held once a year. There's a limited number of countries that are available for it. Our office does not handle diversity visa cases because there's really no need for a lawyer involved. So to be honest, I don't even know the timing. But I bet if you just, use our friend Mr. Google and type in diversity lottery, you'll get all the instructions. I would be very, very wary of using someone who pretends to help or give you a better chance. Those tend to be scams and are simply looking to take your money. But it is a legitimate program, and there's no conflict whatsoever in applying for the diversity lottery and also having an EB3 case or an H1 or a TN or anything else. So no harm in trying. And if you get lucky, it can be faster. Not always, but it can.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Mike. I heard the term lottery all the time growing up. As some of you may know, I moved here from South Africa with my family back in 2000, and we have many friends who actually were able to come through the green card lottery. So I've always been intrigued by this green card lottery. I think I will use my friend Google to learn a little bit more. Very interesting. Okay, so Chris, there is a question from Angela that is asking for an update on the progress of the Dignity Act bill after its introduction in Congress. Is the Dignity Act bill different from HWRA? What is that?
Yeah, the Dignity Act is a different bill than HWRA. It has a whole slew of provisions to it. It was just introduced this week by Congresswoman Salazar, who's out of Florida. She has a Democratic co-sponsor in the House who also sponsored it. I'm not sure who he is. I have not seen a companion bill in the Senate yet, and of course you need both houses. It would probably not be helpful for nurses in its current form. In fact, for Philippine and all other nurses, it likely would be actually slightly detrimental, although the math is very confusing because on one hand, it increases the per country quotas from 7 to 15%, which will definitely help the Indian nationals, but that would on its face mean that there might be an additional retrogression for all other Philippines. On the other hand, it does exempt a whole slew of older green cards from the quotas. And so I don't know if anyone's actually gone through and done the math to see if the number of visas that will no longer count against the quota would offset that increase from 7 to 15%. So I'll be in DC in about 2 weeks. It's one of the questions we have on our list to ask to see if anybody's actually done the math. And also, as with any immigration legislation, this one's going to be really hard because it aims to solve a whole bunch of problems in immigration, including the southern border and increased funding. It aims to try and figure out a legal path for all the many millions of undocumented folks who are in the United States. It has some of these employment-based visa improvements. And then, of course, it will almost surely, even if it were to make it through the House and make it through the Senate, my guess is even if it were to do that, it would go through a number of amendments. And so I wouldn't get too worked up on the details of that bill. It's only been out a week, and it's going to be very hard to get that bill passed because anytime the bill is that big, there's always some congressman somewhere who has a problem with some clause in the bill, and that often is enough to derail something like that.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm sure we will all look forward to hearing more about this as it potentially progresses, but very interesting. So thank you for sharing. So I see we are at the hour. So thank you both for being here today and answering all of our questions. I know I certainly learned something today, so I'm sure our viewers did as well. So thank you both for being here, giving your expert advice. As always, we truly appreciate it. And we will see you again next month for all the questions.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. So if you were watching today and you were inspired, you learned something new, we want to hear about it. Let us know in the comments. Let us know what other topics you want us to focus on. We want to make sure that if you are watching along with us, that you are getting the information that is helpful to you. And if you were inspired and you want to reach your American dream today, we are AMN Healthcare International, where we have both direct hire and staffing options for you all across the United States. Our positions are constantly changing. So please apply on our website, amnhealthcare.com/international, and get your place in line. That is definitely the biggest takeaway that I have taken from today. It is do what you can do, control what you can control. Get your place in line, pass your NCLEX, get that current work experience, pass your English. Do those things that you can do, because visa retrogression is hard. Let's be honest. It's hard to wait. It's hard to see what's going to happen and not know. I think for anybody who's watching along, you can relate to that feeling. So all that you can do is wait wisely, and knowledge is power. So help yourself during the situation. Take what you can into your control, and you will move forward. We will get you here. It's just a matter of when. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So let's bring up our shows for the rest of the month. We have our Onwards and Upwards shows next Friday, July 25th. We are going to be focusing on med-surg nurses in the USA. And on August 15th, we are going to be doing our once-a-month immigration Q&A. These shows are for 7 to 8 a.m. California, Pacific Standard Time. We also have our AMN Academy. So these are free shows every Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, California time, with our partners iPass and 9.09er, free English class, free NCLEX classes. This is how you take your destiny into your control, and you do the things that you can control. So thank you for joining us all today. I appreciate everybody's questions and comments in the chat. I see you, and I appreciate you being here today. You are taking the steps on your journey to reaching your American dream by joining us and learning more. So thank you all for being here today, and I will see you all again next week. Onwards and upwards, everybody.